Okay, we're live? I think we're live.
And we're live.
We're live.
Here comes the theme music.
What do we want for theme music?
Oh, we talked about this last time. I think,
Mm.
it's Flintstones, Jetsons,
Right,
and
right.
Take Off to the Great White North by Geddy Lee. We got to prompt that. We've been a little busy this week. I mean, are you feeling AI overload? I've talked to a couple people this week that described something called AI burnout.
I had a dear friend um, who I is an investor, and I met with him and his team, and he called me for follow up. And I thought we'd be talking about like deal terms and stock and stuff. And he said, I'm worried about you. Are you getting enough sleep? You were kind of a little like on edge. And he sees it with one of his other partners who's been like not sleeping. It's not AI psychosis. This is different. This is not
Yeah, that's
about
different.
like
I agree.
being one with the model and the sycophancy, but it is this feeling of like I described it before as musical chairs, where it's like, oh my God, or the Pac-Man that's glowing. I got to do all this stuff before the magic stops,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. That's right. The Pac-Man glowing is the right one. Pac-Man
Mhm.
in a power pellet. Totally. I feel it too. I mean, I think it's what Andre Karpathy described in December that where he said, and this is a guy who's a very talented engineer, right? He said that he just feels behind. And it wasn't even that. Like that's one feeling. I think the feeling that I have that I understand that he was describing is it is the feeling that I have this superpower and I'm not very good at using it yet. I've just been handed it. I know there's a lot more capability here, and I'm kind of like just running in circles around it. Trying to figure out like what's the right angle to look at it from. Although, the thing is to keep doing things with it. I have to say for myself, this has been a good week because some of the pieces have come together, right? Some of the playing has become knowledge in a way, like it's solidified a bit. I'm like, okay. I see more than one side of this coin here, and I know some things that I need to do to make this work, and particularly around the security conversations around OpenClaw this week. We've been deep in it and looking at it at Ledger and like legitimately asking ourselves, how can we help when there's kind of no way around the fact that it's a gaping security hole in your life? But we can talk about that later. But yeah, it's been quite a week. And as we sit here right now, two things. One, you went to some kind of a San Francisco AI meetup last night, and I'd like to hear about that. But also, we just got a release. We got two releases today because OpenAI did something for enterprise, and Anthropic released 4.6, and a couple of it, which they say is the best model for coding. Leagues better than, or not leagues, but significantly better than 4.5, and also scoring higher than Codex, which in many benchmarks had passed 4.5s. Yeah, like Seth, tell us about last night and tell us what Anthropic released today.
Last night was ClawCon. ClawCon.
Has this replaced Claude Code Anonymous? I'm
I don't
asking
know.
because I'm planning to host a Claude Code Anonymous in Paris, and I don't know if I should even call it that, given that Pete doesn't even use Claude Code anymore, although maybe he does as of tonight.
He does. He said he spent so here the context was there's a group, I don't know if we're boomers or 40 somethings, 50 somethings, honestly, in San Francisco. Dave Morin, who you know, and Michael Galpert, MSG, who I know from, years ago, just the startup scene. I think I shared a Burning Man camp once and I guess as of a couple months ago, you'd say I'm deep in Claude Code and people would be like, oh, you got to talk to him. He's in it too. Or he's in it
Okay.
too. Right now, everybody, I don't even, you talk about it. It seems cliche, but deep in it. And a couple weeks ago, I think he had MSG just organized like a meetup, and I think there were, I don't know, 20, 30 people that showed up. It wasn't Moltbot, Claudebot, OpenClaw yet, because clearly that was a couple weeks ago. And then I guess last week he announced ClawCon, and lo and behold, last night I show up and there's literally a line around the block at Frontier Tower on Market, at or right next to the old Twitter building, right? Apparently, there was 1,000 RSVPs. They had a line of 100 people outside in a classic New York hustler mode. I just went right to the front, just cut through as we do. You can't do that in any city other than San Francisco. There's a lot of no comments. And it was a fucking nut house. And, he was wearing his his lobster tail, like mouse ears. There was free lobster that had been sponsored by somebody. Dave and Britt were there, and Ashton Kutcher was there, with his hat, kind of hiding, didn't want to be outed. It was a lot of energy. There was a lot of energy. I don't quite know what to make of it yet, other than like, this is real, it's popping off, and we're not the only ones thinking, like it's happening. We need to go deep and wide into what happened with Claudebot, Moltbook, now OpenClaw, and get our arms around it. Clearly, Pete Steinberger, who is the founder, was racing up and down Sand Hill Road, was doing the rounds clearly among VCs, was looking to hire people, I think he's doing a hackathon today at OpenAI, was at Anthropic yesterday. So it's all happening. It's all merging. And whether it's open source, closed source, client-based, server-based, on your Mac Mini, on your Mac Studio, or in the cloud, I think that's for us to unpack. There's obviously a huge number of security issues because it's all about, wait a minute, someone's going to hack in, I'm exposed, and take all my stuff with the Russian malware. We can get to that. But we should start by pulling back. And, what we wanted to do in this episode, even though we have so much to cover, is reintroduce you, right? Get your Genesis story. We did mine last time. We can tune it because there's a lot about you online. Like, reintroduce yourself here. Why are you doing this? Why are we doing this together? Tell us a little bit about your journey, and kind of leading into some of the seminal moments over the last couple of months with Rick.
Sure. I think really, that's funny. I really just want to jump into the Clawbot stuff. So let's go quickly through my story, which there's lots of places you can hear it. So for anybody who's actually interested in my story, a couple of years ago, 2 summers ago, so I guess that's 2.5 years ago, recorded a long podcast with Rick Rubin. I was heavily caffeinated, makes amazing like ball jars full of iced coffee. And I was also just so excited to talk to him. And of all people, the fact
with regular milk, almond milk, oat milk, no milk.
I just drink it straight,
black,
no black,
sugar.
No, absolutely. I just ice.
Okay.
And you can hear it, by the way. I swear, if you listen, when I listen to that, I hear the caffeine. But it was long. We did it over a couple of days. And then last summer we did it again. So there's a catch up on it. So for really, like, there's 4 or 5 hours of your life that I can't give you back if you'd like to know, like really, where I come from. I also did a thing for the Monty Report, which is another one you could listen to that gives you a lot more about me than anyone could possibly want to know, even my mom, who I just hung up with and says hello. But I think, my story in a nutshell is grew up in Indiana, and I think the part of the story that really makes me is I had a stepdad that brought computers into our house when I was a kid, and I started, working with computers. Actually, took computer class when I was 8 years old. Of course, I played video games. But then I was like, the assistant instructor at this little Goshen College, Indiana. Goshen College, the Mennonite college in northern Indiana place. And when I was 10 years old. But then when I was around 14, he and my mom divorced, and then it was like no computers in the house and latchkey kids, skateboarding, punk rock. Ended up getting my girlfriend pregnant when I was 17 years old. And so I think like these two things are exactly who I am, right? If you know me as sort of like the skateboarder, yep, that's who I am. If you know me as the nerd, yep, that's also who I am. When I got to college, I started studying education, but then was helping my friends with their computer homework and got talked by my former stepdad into registering for computer science, or enrolling in the computer science program at Indiana University. And that was 1991. I started college in 91. I started the CS program, graduated in 94. And it was just like that moment. I started grad school then actually too, but in the summer of 94, I showed a room full of people on Lollapalooza, the internet, for the first time. The Beastie Boys were in that room. L7 was in that room. Mark Geiger was in that room. Matt Sweeney from Chavez. Also, more recently, Cat Stevens Band. He was in the room. Anyway, that's the long story short. There's much more to that story. But then I did digital music for 20 years. Winamp in the late 90s, Yahoo Music, 2000s.
Just for those of us that aren't in our 90s, what was
Winamp was the MP3 player in 1998, 99. I'm sold to AOL in May of 99. But if you were on the internet in 99, I think we had,
Spinner, Winamp.
yeah. So they, AOL bought Spinner and Winamp on the same day
I know
in
Josh
May of
Felser and
99.
Dave, so I know
Yep.
that's sort of, yeah.
Exactly. So they bought all of us and put us all in a building at 19th and Alabama in San Francisco. Back then, Winamp had 30 million users in 1999, which was close to 10% of the internet at the time. So if you were on the internet and liked music, you definitely know that Winamp, whips a llama's ass. When I mention Winamp today, there's only two possible, responses. One is just a glazed look, like, what? Good for you. The other one is like, dude, Winamp, that was my shit. I'm sure, by the way, 20 years from now, that's going to be MetaMask. Like you either lived in MetaMask for 2 years, you know what I mean? Or it's like, it's good.
We're not talking about crypto today, right?
Oh my God. Thankfully, no. What a brutal day today was in crypto. Not talk.
Still,
yeah, exactly. Let's not talk.
I'm not going to look. I'm not going to
look. Yeah, don't look. It always comes back. It's a good time to buy.
Does it though?
It always has. Put the DCA on right now. That's my move.
Keep going.
Yeah, so then Yahoo Music, and then did a really amazing company in my view, and I mean that spiritually because commercially it was a failure, but called Topspin. It was about going direct to consumer. So if you think about kind of Bandcamp, Patreon model, I could talk for days about what we did wrong there, and I think I do in the Rick Rubin podcast. Failure teaches you a hell of a lot more than success. But after that, I did Beats Music with Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre and Luke Wood and Trent Reznor, and we sold that to Apple, and then built Apple Music with Jimmy and Dre and Trent and Zane Lowe add to the mix, who's just like a super talented human being. And then I got a call to come to Paris and work for the luxury conglomerate LVMH as their chief digital officer, which was just I loved it. I did that for 5 years, consulted for 4 years after. But while I was in Paris, I ended up meeting Pascal Gauthier, who is the CEO of Ledger, also Tony Fadell, who invented the iPod and co-invented the iPhone. Together, we hatched a plan to take the company Ledger to the next place, which is where I've been for the last 5 years. And, Ledger, in a nutshell, again, because I think we got to move on to the OpenClaw. But I think if I could summarize what we've done at Ledger, like really, if you look at the devices, they are the best in terms of security and design. We brought in this secure touchscreen model, the first secure touchscreen, and this does have relevance actually in the OpenClaw conversation. So we'll get there. But it's because it's not just about crypto. It is about security in this world that we're moving into, which includes agentic assistants for human beings, and who manage the information and the privacy and the money of human beings. So the bridge is immediate. It's not very long. And we've been predicting that for many years. And that really, if you talk to Pascal and Tony and, the things that we've been talking about for the last 6 years, this has always been about, the blockchain is one form of proof, but ultimately, is this me? Is this my voice coming through this microphone? You look at Instagram today and you see a cute video, and you're crazy if you don't immediately go, is it real? It's even in the most basic video, it's a legit question at this point. So proof is going to become a real piece of collateral, or a real piece of,
is that the
value
bridge between luxury and crypto for you? Going from LVMH to Ledger makes all the sense in the world, but it also is totally confusing to people.
For sure. Yeah. I think my career has been really confusing to people. I think that, LVMH, yeah, exactly. LVMH is probably the odd man out overall when you really look at it that way. But for me, it really wasn't. I would say that, they're just different things. Music to LVMH was a chance for me. What I always said is what I became over 20 years of digital music was a student of how the internet changes culture. For me, it was right around, 98, 99, 2000, as you had MP3s and then Napster and then Nutella. And then there was this other thing. I remember this piece from Posner, or back around 2000, where he was prescient in saying that the internet brought us Fox News, which was sort of like, you were like, what are you talking about? Like, how is the internet driving a television channel? But what he meant was, when you have this mass media world, the way you get the most audience is they all drive toward the center. If you have two newspapers in a town, to get the most audience, they kind of drive toward the middle. Right. Whereas in what he was pointing out in 2000 was that because you had unlimited distribution channels on the internet, that, suddenly you had to really, stake a ground. And John Higgs, one of my favorite authors, said to me late last year, he said, I'm sort of seeing a world now where, just like the way to get audience in the mass media world was to drift toward the center, the way you get audience in the internet world is to be on the extremes. So the same way that centrist media wasn't really the voice of the people in the mass media world, the polarizing media is also not the voice of the people in the internet world. Someone said to me the other day, oh yeah, everyone's mad at Bad Bunny and the Super Bowl, and he's not American. My question was like, are they though? I bet if you pick 10 people off the street and you're like, are you super upset about Bad Bunny playing the Super Bowl? They'd be like, my buddy's cool, whatever. Right. But like, if you pay attention to what's online, then the feeling you're going to get is, everybody hates Bad Bunny. So like what I became over all those years was a student of how the internet changes culture. And what LVMH was for me was I got it in a big way with respect to music, and I could talk about it authoritatively, but I don't know. I mean, ask me, I'm not like a movie guy. I don't know anything about, luxury clothes. So, going to LVMH was a chance for me to take all these theories about how the internet has influenced taste and the way that people make choices in their lives, and go, does this apply beyond music? And the great thing for me was that it did. Of course it did. I mean, physics works like that, right? And these were just kind of media physics. I gave a talk in the 2000s called Media Physics, and so the chance to test those out. I think the Ledger scratched a couple of other itches for me. When I decided to make that move from LVMH to Ledger, it was because I just like being on the frontier. To me, like a consumer internet of, 6.5 billion people is really boring. I want to be where the new stuff is happening. It's where it's moving quickly. It's where it's really unknown. It's where you can know the direction of travel, but you can't really. I mean, I love that, and I always point out that in 2002, I had this very unpopular view that the future of music was subscription. And of course, I was vindicated and I was right. But the truth is that if you'd have told me, the future is subscription, and the company that cracks it is going to be from Sweden, and they're going to start with Europe, I'd be like, you're an idiot. Right. And so I think in all times, that's what you can know. I think you can know the direction of travel. And you can also know that the specifics are going to surprise you. And I love that, actually. It doesn't scare me. I love it. I'm maybe overly excited by that, I realize, at this point in my life. So that's kind of like who I am and how I got here, and also why this is exciting to me. I mean, if I may, I think, first of all, like we talked about in the last show, I really credit you with turning me on to Claude Code specifically. But I mean, I've always been an early adopter of AI, and even I've always had kind of an AI rap, right? Like what I would say, even when I was at LVMH, is like, I promise you can't go through the day without using AI, because when you're using Waze, when you're scrolling the Instagram feed, you are on some level using AI. And of course, ChatGPT was just this incredible moment when the average person could just have their eyeballs popped open by what it was capable of doing. That you took the same tools in a way that were powering things like your Instagram feed, and they started answering questions for you in your life. And then I did start to have it writing code for me. I actually think the first code I had AI write for me was something that just flipped through. I just made a script that would flip through 5 different MP-Cause Chimera. That was the first script I ever made with AI. I was like, I could write this. I don't want to write this.
That was your hello world?
That was my hello world, because it was something I could have easily written, but I don't want to going to open VI and write a stupid HTML JavaScript file. No, I just did it for me in 2 seconds. And I was like, and then I kept going, but the Claude code for me, and thank you. I think there's an interesting thing here. We talked about this last time around just the command line itself. I was like, this is beautiful. I'm in a terminal again. Like for you, it was maybe you were saying like you weren't, but I was a guy that once upon a time would just sit on a next computer, open terminal, make it full screen, like open Emacs, hit escape W3, and boom, I've got 3 windows, right? So I'm completely comfortable at the command line or inside of Tmux or
Yeah, you turned me
whatever.
on to Tmux. I'm like, whoa, and the VSP and
Still,
VPS.
yeah, I still have to keep a Tmux like cheat sheet next to me, right? It's like the Tmux is, but this is it. I was just thinking about this. We were talking last time about this command line renaissance, but it makes perfect sense because command lines are super efficient and really confusing. You know who likes super efficient and really confusing? AI coders, not the people, the bots. Because if I show you all of the commands for Tmux, you'd be like, my God, why did you make it like this? Why is it that when you create a new window, it's that flag, but when you try to attach to that window, it's that other flag? Why didn't you just make them the same? Whereas you show all of those commands and flags to the AI coder and it goes, that's it? Okay, got it. And then it just goes. It doesn't complain about the syntax. It loves the efficiency. It does whatever it needs to do. So this is why you've got this command line renaissance, because like if you're going to make something, you're going to make it command line first, because the AI is going to get it quick. It's going to be efficient. It's going to use the least number of tokens, and then a few humans can find their way around it if they have to, but the bottom line is they never have to. Even if you know how to do it. I mean, for example, with OpenClaw, we'll get into more of this, but just as an example, like the old way would have been you've got a command line open, you're editing, config files at the command line, or maybe there are command line things you're doing to edit the config. Now I just, open Claude in one terminal, and then I have, OpenClaw in another, and I tell Claude like, hey, change this config for me, or I did this and it broke. Can you fix it? I could do it. I know how to do it, but it's not efficient for me to do that. So anyway, I've written, I just looked like, okay, in all the like dumb little personal projects I've done since August, how much did I do? It's a little over 200,000 lines of code. How many lines of code have I looked at? Probably fewer than 100.
I call it blind coding. Like when Michael Jordan shot the basketball blind.
It's totally insane to me.
Hold on. We missed one little thing, which is like, I think the Rick Rubin moment's important, right? There was a moment, I think it was 6 months ago.
Let me tell the story. Yeah, let me tell the story. Because I don't think I've told this story really. You get a lot of the story. You get a lot of the story if you go to YouTube, search Rick Rubin, Ian Rogers, and there's like a bonus episode. When I was with Rick last summer, I asked him if he would mind if I interviewed him and talked about his book, The Way of Code, which is his vibe coding book based on the Tao Chi. And please listen to it. I'm quite proud of it. I feel like I interviewed Rick Rubin about AI and spirituality in 2025 is going to be one of those things that I say 30 years from now, just like I could say I showed the internet to a room full of people backstage at Lollapalooza in 1994. I do legitimately feel like it's one of those things. And I think I'm proud of about the interview is when you listen to it, you do get a sense of Rick's creative process. And, for the guy who wrote the Creative Act to kind of share his creative process it's good. And you kind of hear, I think he's honest. He tells you like when he was making a joke in places he doesn't normally make jokes. He tells you that he was doing something. He was kind of feeling around in the dark but he knew he was feeling around in the right direction. He tells you that, this is a guy. I mean, let's, it doesn't matter what you think of Rick Rubin. Rick Rubin dropped everything around April, May of last year to focus on a book about vibe coding. Guys, like think about that for a second. The guy is.
What did he see?
It's not like he doesn't have much to do. He felt something, I think is the better way to put it. And my side of the story is this. I was in Hong Kong last year for Consensus. I just what I remember is I'm scrolling like always, and I see that Rick is the meme for vibe coding. And whoever did that, by the way, is a genius, because Rick is, kind of famously a guy that doesn't play any instruments, doesn't, operate Pro Tools, but he somehow helps people make great records. And he's made some of my favorite records of my entire life, whether that's the Beastie Boys and Slayer or, Johnny Cash. There's a lot that Tom Petty, it goes much further into Adele and, and System of a Down and a bazillion other things. But for me, things that are like really close and personal and special, yet, he is sort of self-professed as, and we're talking about Yeezus. First time I met Kanye was at Rick's studio once upon a time. That might not be true, actually. I think I met him at Guy O'Siri's house first. But first time I sat behind a mixing console with Kanye was at Rick's studio. And yeah, I mean, so Rick as the meme for vibe coding. I just thought it was genius. And I thought, does Rick know this? Like, would Rick even, like, would this even mean anything to him? Like, is it stupid? Is it silly? What is it? So I text him, say, do you know what vibe coding is? This is again Consensus last year, because I remember I'm standing in line. I found an amazing coffee place in Hong Kong, and I would go there every morning, and it would take them like 30 minutes to make a cup of coffee. And I didn't care. It was worth it. The caffeine fix was so good. And I remember standing there and texting him, and he writes back, not really, but I think I'm the meme for it. Like he had picked up on that. And then he went down that rabbit hole, and I got to go there with him, and I got to sort of.
It was so early, and the term vibe coding was still cringe.
Yes.
He, and the cynic would be like, oh, he got paid off by Anthropic to push this, but like, he was right.
Well, and what's interesting is, so he tells this story. And again, so I'll just, listen to that, and then I'll just tell the parts of it that I don't think are there. Because he's like, I think I'm going to make a book based on the DAO about this. And I was like, okay. I think I even did like a draft with ChatGPT. It just went, okay, let me just prompt this. He didn't use any of what I sent to him. It was easy to do, obviously. He tells the process of how he actually did it. I mean, it was much more painstaking than me just, putting a prompt into ChatGPT. But then as we're going through it, he's like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. Like he was making it, but he had no endpoint. And my contribution there was, I would love for it to just sort of appear in the AI. My kind of original thought was when the Beastie Boys released Hello Nasty in 1998, one of the first things that we did, actually the first thing that we did from a marketing perspective, was put infomercials on overnight in like 10 major markets in the US. And it was intentionally this thing where what they really wanted and what we loved was we just wanted someone to like wake up stoned on the couch and be like, what? Like, what am I seeing? And then have to call their friends and kind of like embarrassingly go, yeah, I'm definitely super high, but I'm pretty sure I just saw a Beastie Boys infomercial, right? Like that was the response that we were hoping for. And so I kind of had a similar feeling for this. So I wanted people to be like, I think that Rick Rubin is talking to me through the AI. That was sort of what I was, and he had actually and he tells the story, he had just interviewed one of the leaders of Anthropic on the podcast and said, look, there's this idea, is there something we can do with it? And it was amazing. Like Anthropic threw a small team at it, like immediately, it wasn't like a big team or the building, but like a few people like to help with getting it into the form of a site. And they did a really good job of it, like creatively putting like generative art, basically art that was generated by the AI on the screen next to the writing that Rick had done. And also, they really like kind of using it as a jumping off point. Like it was also meant to be sort of this thing where you could go, well, what if we go this direction from this piece of art or this page? And that was something that Rick really liked, because that's kind of what he does in his practice with artists. He doesn't tell them what to do. What he does is he introduces something that brings them in a direction. So it's something that's within them, But, there could be, it's sort of, like the oblique strategies sort of thing, right? Like, let me get you out of your comfort zone just far enough that something new comes around. So it was, for me, just like a joy, closest I've ever been to, to his creative process. And I'm really like, I think there will be a day in the future when Rick doesn't text me every day about vibe coding, and I will be very sad. I mean, I know I should just be thankful that I've had so many of those days up to this point, but it's really like, the best parts of my day is like scrolling through, and I've actually learned a ton. There's things that I've pulled into my own practice that I wouldn't have seen had they not come to me from Rick Rubin, and that is kind of extraordinary to me. So yeah, you can tell that I'm totally chuffed to be, to have been exactly who I am at that moment, to be able to be there and be that. But it's also accurate to say that Rick was ahead of me on vibe coding. He brought more to it than I did. I mean, it wasn't until sort of, August of last year when I look at my GitHub, it's not until August of last year that I started making AI created commits there. But Rick was on this very early in 2025. So yeah, thank you for reminding me that was on our agenda. I'm glad to have that out there.
Yeah, I just think it is, and hopefully we'll get Rick on this show at some point as we hit stride, but he is such an important creative figure. The number of, founders that I've seen, the book, The Way, what's it called?
The Creative Act.
The Creative Act, like stacks of them, it's really like a kind of Bible for this moment.
Yeah, and if people haven't read it, I mean, I have to say, I wasn't sure what I would take from it, but I mean, and I always tell my friends is I totally recommend the audiobook. I think the audiobook is brilliant because you hear Rick reading it and it's really personal. He told me it was quite hard for him to do. That was not like comfortable for him to read that audiobook. But for me, it's also something that you can just pick up on any page and get something out of it. Like, consuming it linearly is not the slightest bit important. You can really, pick it up anywhere and take something from it. I really, which is, I think personally, it's my personal belief. I think it'll be the most important thing that he's done, even though he's made so much great music. I mean, the Ghetto Boys, which is one of my favorite creations, appeals to a relatively small group of people, whereas the Creative Act, I think, really appeals to almost everyone. And not only that, I think there's something important for me, which is that creativity is not like being wacky. Creativity is making something. Like you're putting something into the world that didn't exist there yesterday. That's creation. And I think that he kind of properly makes, even somebody who feels like, oh, I'm not creative. Someone tried to tell me this the other day. It's like, oh yeah, I'm not creative. Yeah, and he's a robotic engineer. And I was like, dude, you're creative. I'm sorry to tell you, you make things, you take things that didn't exist, and make them real. You are creative. And I'm sure if he read the Creative Act, that he would recognize something in himself. And I think that's really the magic of that book.
So now here's the perfect transition, because we got letter 15. What does Rick think of ClawBot, Moltbot, OpenClaw, which is a disaster from a branding and marketing perspective? It's such a disaster, and yet who cares?
Yeah, I honestly couldn't tell you. I could tell you that he's thinking about it and I can tell you that he's interested in it because he sends me things about it. But they don't come with commentary. They don't come with like, oh my God, have you fucking seen this? They just come. So my guess is that he's just taking it in and saying, this is interesting. What is this? What is this? Where does this go? I'll probably need to wait until next summer to find out what he really thinks about it.
What do you think of it?
I think, I really think.
Tell me the story. How did you discover it? Like, where are we? Where's your journey? Where are we?
Yeah, let's talk about OpenClaw. I actually discovered Pete much before I discovered OpenClaw because, like many people, and like we talked about last week, what I tried to do, I was already using Claude Code and I was already building things. And what I tried to do over my Christmas holiday was actually get better at it. And, it was around the time that Boris from Anthropic had written his thing about here's how I use it. And then I kind of went down the rabbit hole on how do other people use this? Like, what can I take in here to like improve the way I do this? And Pete, who made Claudebot at the time it was called, he's got a great blog, and he's very well spoken on exactly how he uses it, and he's super like honest and direct about how he uses it as well, what he does, what he doesn't do. So that's how I had actually found him. And I saw Claudebot, and I frankly wasn't that interested in it, to be honest. Again, it just wasn't something I felt like I needed in my life. But I was already aware of him. And, then I, once, we started to get, well, so, and then for me with Claude Code, I've been just building things that I wanted to exist, really just to learn. I just really, I mean, stuff for me and my family. It's not even really that worth talking about all that much. A daily planner for myself, a gallery for my digital art, a recipe tool
Recipe
for
stuff is beautiful. We should put this all in the show
for
notes.
for Hedvig, which I used tonight, by the way. I put a new recipe in there. I made a pear gorgonzola thing and added it. So things like that. It's, for me, it's just playing to know what it is and what it isn't. So ultimately, I got to that place with Claudebot as well. So a couple of weeks ago, I was like, okay, I'm just going to install this just to see what it is. I was on a train. I installed it. I connected it to my WhatsApp because that seemed easiest. I connected it to my email because that was easy to do. I did a couple things. Train ride was over. It was late at night. I went to bed. I woke up at 2:00 in the morning and typed RM-RF Claudebot because I was like, I'm not comfortable sleeping while this thing has any of my credentials. I know enough about security to be freaked out by it. So then I was like, oh, like, how could I do this? Like, how could I test this thing out? I had it on a VPS by itself. So that was it. So then it's a question of like, well, what is it? What are you giving it access to? Well, you talk to it, you're giving it access to your memories, and those are going somewhere on disk. So that's a bit of a honeypot. We talked about, what's your quantified Seth, so you've already got that risk sitting out there, but I'm not super comfortable with it.
It's my data lake. As they call it.
Swimming in the
Where
data
somebody
lake.
calls it. My data lake is filled with my limitless, I wear this, and so I have, perfect recall. Granola now has an MCP server. My Google Clicks, my Chrome clickstream history, my Google Maps location history, all my Claude MD files, you name it. I'm just kind of dumping it all in there. My order ring, the ring data. Yeah, I could put like, Chase account. I mean, gets a little scary. I don't want to get hacked, but like I just wanted to know everything about me.
Yeah. And how do you use it? Like, do you find yourself querying it often, or does it just kind of is like, it's a utility ambient that like when you need something, you can find it?
I had to fly from San Francisco to LA to New York last week, and it was really helpful on the road through Telegram, just as an assistant should be. It's like when I'm at my desk, I'm good. I don't need it so much. I'm just trying to train it and keep up with the Joneses and make sure that because I have not only I have my Claw bot, I also have an agent that I call @Seth that I've trained, that prior to Clawbot, that was using the Anthropic, Claude agent SDK that I've kind of trained, and I've ingested a bunch of stuff into it. And I try to like connect them so they have the best of both worlds. Because I do think as much as OpenClaw is about, self-sovereignty and putting it on your Mac Studio or whatever, there's also a lot of benefits of using just the core Claude, in the sky. So I'm trying to balance both. I love the hacker, like just vibes that it's picking up and seeing that last night and seeing people fuck around with Raspberry Pis and hardware. It's tapping into something much more than a personal assistant. And that's what I kind of want to get into is like, first of all, if nothing else, you're a cultural historian, and we both are, right? Before we get into, I guess, how to and some tutorial stuff, we don't have a ton of time. Why has it captured the zeitgeist?
Well, that's a good question. I think because it is both useful and scary, I would say. It hits both of those things. And I think it is legitimately a peek into the future that we didn't have before. So what we had before was we had these big models kind of duking it out to be really helpful. And what now OpenClaw has done is sat in the middle and actually kind of commoditized and disintermediated them and said, no, it's actually the fact that you can delegate tasks to these things. Like if you look at the lineage from my perspective is like AI is a thing that's academic and being used by applications. Again, I mentioned like Waze or, the way that your Instagram feed was presented to you. Then it became sort of a better Google, right? I can type a question and get an English language answer that is just surprisingly good. And, I'm talking to somebody who is intelligent. With Claude Code, that quickly then became, oh, wait, I can build things with this. This can do things for me. You got another little glimpse of that with Claude Cowork, which is sort of headed in that Clawbot direction. But OpenClaw has actually, I think, shown us what the future looks like, is that we do actually hire AI to do things for us, right? We delegate to AI, and it's showing us that model. And I think the thing that is extraordinary about it, and the reason that we're all kind of fascinated with it, is that you can take all of the tools that are at your disposal and pull them together into something new. So for example, I have one set up with a special research mode. And in research mode, it uses the combination of a Brave Search API key and a Google Gemini API key and an Anthropic API key. And it does sort of thoughtful research in a way that no single AI could do. It's actually not that technical, but by pulling all these bricks together, it gives you a glimpse of something else. I had today to call, some customer care somewhere. And so I asked OpenClaw, can you do this for me? And the answer was, no, not right now, but here are 3 services that we can install. And once you install them, then I will be able to do that for you. And that's insane. That's just something we've never had. We as humans have always been waiting on, the Adobes and Salesforces and, whomever's of the world to finally deliver us that software that does 25 to 30% of what we'd like it to do. And then we, the humans, do the other 75, to 70%. And that's just the glimpses. You're like, oh, we don't need that anymore. And the
And these
thing
software companies are tanking right now.
well, I mean, Anthropic released things some new skills this week, and you saw a huge sell off. And I mean, the thing that I wrote after Christmas break, I wrote that in there. I said, like, this is what I see, because, I was a chief digital officer at LVMH. What do? Well, you need an ERP system. You're not a tech company. So you give somebody $1 million for the software, you pay $750,000 to someone else for the quote unquote integration, which really just means the $1 million you paid for software didn't deliver you software that's useful. So now I have to pay someone to make that software useful. And then you've got to hire, a small team of people to make that software keep working. Like that's over. I mean, that, by the way, good riddance. Like, if you're not a technical company and you have this huge technical tax, why wouldn't you just, take a 25-year-old and put them in with the finance team, and take another 25-year-old and put them in with the HR team? And like, this is Bob. Tell Bob what you need, and Bob will build it for you today. One of the things I built for myself is like a little day manager. And one of the things that's in it is a workout planner. And one of my friends is using the workout planner. He texted me today some bugs. I literally copied and pasted his bug report to Clawbot, and it fixed it and pushed it live while I was in a meeting doing something else. Like that's the glimpse of the future that this thing gives you. So I think this is why I think it's both. I think there's the scary part of it, and that is one of the things that captures the zeitgeist, like we mentioned earlier. Like things that are extreme, and there are extreme risks. There's a little bit of, dystopia with it. Like those things are very real. So I think that's one thing that captures the imagination. I think, though, that would make it just like a fad. And I'd probably put Maltbook in that category, right? But, OpenClaw itself is genuinely useful. Like I said, I mean, someone sent me a bug report. I copied and pasted it into a chat, and, 10 minutes later, the fix was pushed live. That's insanely useful. And that will,
What is like this? If we have to boil this down, smooth brain it for the normies, for whomever is just not in this right now and hearing about it, like what is OpenClaw? How do you
that's a great, yeah,
describe
we
it
should have started
to,
there.
Bernard Arnault or whoever in your universe that is really important culturally and is trying to understand and keep up with what's going on?
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think of a concise way to do this. What it is, an agent that sits there waiting for your requests. And when you make a request, it will try to follow that request all the way to the end using all of the resources that are at its disposal. And those include anything that you've told it or taught it previously, plus it's connected to any service that you might want to connect it to. It's already connected to many services, and the more are coming online constantly. So that goes from, of course, AI applications such as, OpenAI and Claude and Gemini and Kimi, et cetera. But it also includes things further afield like Apple Notes, Sonos, Obsidian, Notion, so, and simply the combination, actually this was actually one of the things that put me over the edge into trying it, was that because I didn't want everything that OpenClaw does. I'm too much of a privacy and a security nerd for that. But it was actually Randy Hunt, who is the head of design at Notion, who told me that like the number one way that people are using AI with Notion is simply connecting, something, whether it's Claude or OpenClaw, to Notion, and just using kind of Notion as a database, right? So it's just this thing where, and he was giving me some specific examples of people who had built kind of extraordinary applications and businesses simply by, giving their AI a central memory. It's just by giving it this like persistent memory where you can say, hey, what's the next thing on my to-do list? Like that alone is a huge unlock.
No, that's how I'm living. 100% is just free the mind, trust the AI, dump everything you can into it. Try to manage context. It's kind of a shit show right now because memory is really, the two things that I've learned, because I started working with Gene Kogan and Xander at Eden.art, 6 months ago, 9 months ago. And the two things they were working on, which I think was incredibly prescient, that were really unique beyond the image models and the video models, was memory, collective memory, and multi-agent systems. And there was no catalyst for it. It didn't jump the shark, but clearly that's where we are. Multi-agent systems is Moltbook, right?
Yeah.
That's what's happening. Collective memory is that these agents can remember things, and they can talk to lots of different surface areas, not just ourselves, but other customer support people, and bring it back and remember and have continuity and have identity, which gets into, which we talk maybe in the next episode, we talk about 8004 and some of these crypto primitives that are really all about maintaining identity and provenance and memory across multiple sessions in a secure unit. I hate to use the word NFT because it gets cringe for people right now given crypto, but it's going to come back with a vengeance to hold these agents accountable in terms of reputation, in terms of identity, in terms of uniqueness. We're going to need crypto. I know many people don't want to acknowledge that. Otherwise, it is an absolute shit show of impersonators and just crud.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I think that the right word is proof, right? Because you need proof. We were talking today about how you could use sort of smart contract wallets because, to define rules, and then you could if you sign the rules of the smart contract wallet with a ledger, as an example, now the rules are the rules. Now you've got proof that these are the rules, and your AI could lean on those rules to say, no, these are the rules I don't cross because these rules have been written in something that's, much stronger than anything it's stronger than any web search that I'm going to do. It's stronger than any prompt that's going to get injected to me. I am looking at, rules that were, that I know were signed by whomever actually holds, the keys to that wallet. Right. And so I think you're right. Like you can't, we've said this for years. You can't have digital abundance without digital scarcity. It's just not how physics works. And I think, another thing we've been saying for a couple of years is we can't go into a world where you have an agent that holds all of your data, all of your logins, all of your credit cards, your identities, and that it creates, too large of a honeypot. Like, that's not the world that we can live in. We're going to have a world where agents can act, but humans have to approve, and that's the scary part of OpenClaw is that, if you've connected it to your WhatsApp and your email, that means that it can do it has access to all that data. It can do things as you. And if somebody sends you an email with something nefarious in it, it might get confused and it might
Prompt
not know.
injections and social engineering.
Yeah, I mean, the same way that somebody might call your mom and pretend they're you, someone might email your bot and pretend they're you and get data that they shouldn't have access to. So, I mean, this is a huge thing that's going to have to be solved.
So maybe this perfect setup, roll up your sleeves, right? For someone listening who wants to try OpenClaw this weekend, what is the minimum viable, safe setup?
So what I would do is, first of all, I would try it. I would try it on a computer, which is not the computer that you're using every day. So if you have an old computer in the closet, I saw today that some people are running it on old Android phones. Like, you don't need to run out and get a Mac Mini. You can go to, get a VPS, from a place like, Hostinger. They're like, whatever, $6 a month or something.
Heitzner.
Yeah, I mean, there's
what does it stand for? VPS?
A virtual private server. Right. So I only mentioned Hostinger because I saw that they actually have like Claude Code machines that that are pretty cheap, like sub $10. But, you can use just AWS, but that's probably too technical for most people. So you can go out and get one of these like turnkey things. Then, it is a little bit like installing Linux, in the 90s, right? It's not totally, you have to at least know your way around a command line a little bit, I think, at this point. Although I saw somebody did put a really nice UI on top of it and today, so you could search around. I don't know which of those are good. I haven't tested them. But what I would say, your question is the right one. Like, what's the minimum, viable installation? So I actually try, like I said, I did WhatsApp, but I don't love that, that it has access to that channel. I tried Discord. I simply couldn't get it to work. I tried Google Chat. Turns out you need like a workspace account. Ultimately, I used Signal. I had access to like
Telegram.
Yeah, Telegram's a good one for people. I don't use Telegram because it's neither private nor secure. But the
hot take.
Well, no, that's a fact. It's the least secure application on the planet. Its security is so bad it can only be intentional.
So why does the whole crypto community use it? But that's another story.
That's another story. We should get somebody on to talk about that. There's a great episode of Security, Privacy, whatever, where they talk about Telegram security, but it is neither private nor secure. They have all of your texts. The only question you should wonder is who else has them?
Mm-hmm.
But it's actually quite simple. I think Telegram is the simplest way to get set up if you are comfortable using Telegram. And, I think that just setting up one channel like that, Telegram, Signal, WhatsApp, I would probably use like a burner number or something if you can set it up with.
I managed to train it on all my iMessages.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't use iMessage either. Also not
Highly
helpful
insecure,
for me.
just like me, insecure.
No, I mean, I just don't. I'm not in the Mac universe anymore. So I don't.
You have a Solana phone?
I don't know. I do not have a Solana phone. I have a Samsung phone. So anyway, I think the next thing to do is to just try to find some use cases that are useful. It really depends on what you're doing. Like, I think if you're, like I said, I mean, I mentioned my little research mode. I think that's what I would do is install it, start to use it like, at the beginning when we were using ChatGPT, my message was like, install ChatGPT and use it like you would use Google, just for a day. Say, I'm never going to go to google.com. I'm going to use ChatGPT. Now, I think with OpenClaw, you do the same thing. Instead of going to whatever AI you're using every day, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, just type that into your OpenClaw and then and ask it, what else could you do for me?
It uses a language model. It's using Claude or it's using OpenAI. Right?
Yep, exactly.
So is it an alternative? Is it an extension? How do we think about it as human beings?
I think it is an extension, and I think you just simply have to think of it as an assistant. It's persistent. What I would do is when you set it up, tell it who you would like it to be. And I would say to it something like, and again, I am security and privacy centric, right? So I would say to it something like, you are not a family member. You are an assistant, and you need to be professional. And
Put it in
you
its place.
well, and I think also, again, these things are incredibly good at playing roles. One of the things I've been saying lately is, the problem is robbers, the solution is cops. They're both people, right? And so they're just people playing different roles. So I would, I think the interesting thing about OpenClaw, which is different from the way that you use ChatGPT, is that you can say to it, you are my assistant. I would like you to behave professionally. I would like you to help me with this, this, and this. I am very, you can say, if you would like, I am very particular about privacy and security. I want you to help me watch those things. And all of these things go into its config file and what they call its soul, and they become part of, who it is. But then,
Constitution.
yeah,
I
you
think of
can
it as
exactly the
Constitution.
Constitution, exactly. And then you can do other things like give it its own Gmail account. Ask it to, here's a really simple one. Have it give it some Twitter or X lists that you follow, and tell it to send you a summary of them every morning at 7 a.m. And it can do that in the channel that you have set up, or it can do it via the email that you give it. It can do that with a different, cheaper model than the one you might be using to do research with. And that's I think where where how you have to start thinking about it is like, how can I delegate? What can this thing do for me? How could I delegate tasks to it? How can I use it like an assistant? And then I think that the first thing that you'll see when you go through the OpenClaw config is this thing is dangerous. So you have to be really
Powerful. Power.
yeah. I mean, look,
With
a
great
brick
power comes great responsibility.
a brick can build a building or break a window. Is fire inherently good or bad? Tools are like this. But I do think you should be careful. First of all, like, know that you are playing with your own data. I would avoid installing things like ClawHub, because you really don't have a way of knowing if what you're installing, you don't know what's included in it, and it has access to many things that you don't want something unknown to have access to. But I also think, what I've been saying for years is that living in the future is cheating. When you're living in the future, you can see the future. And certainly today, using OpenClaw is a lot like living in the future. And you will see and feel the future. I had high-speed internet at Indiana University in 93, 94, and I feel like I just watched the world catch up for 8 years behind that. And I'm having that same sort of feeling today. I can delegate a task via a text message, and it actually works. Okay. I'm definitely seeing what the world looks like 8 years from now, right now, when we do that.
Okay. I think that's where we are.
That's where we are.
That's where we are.
There's more.
A lot more. We could keep going.
Yeah, there's 4.6. There's Teams. There's
Vibestats.io is now live. I've been sort of debugging it as we're talking, trying to get it out there, because you can hit /insights now and kind of get and this is kind of what triggered me the end of in December. Is like, I wanted to share what I'd been building, and there's no way of doing it. There was no way of kind of tapping into all the metadata around all those sessions on Cloud Code. And now you can. Now you hit /insights. It's single player. It shows you what you've done. But I tried to make something today that allows us to compare and contrast and make it more social. So try that out.
because you didn't have anything to do this week.
No. And it's not like I have moving boxes behind me and I have to head to the storage place because the movers are meeting me there in a half an hour on Folsom.
Right.
So this was good. We got my background, your background out there.
Next
now we
week,
can kind of
guests.
get into it. Let's pick
Next
well,
week.
offline. Let's figure out a guest for next week.
Exactly.
I'll be dialing in from Arizona. Where will you be?
Yeah, I will.
Yeah, don't say. Don't. No. We're gonna be
I
quiet.
will. I will. Yeah, I'll be moving around America
Be
somewhere.
moving around.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, episode 2. Let's vibe.
Peace.